welcome to our next in the series of Aging with Attitude. My name is Rita, and for those that have or have not been watching, Aging with Attitude is targeted to the 45 to 64 demographic and those that are older and younger, those that support them for a new normal of aging. Today we have a couple of special guests. Our conversation will go a little bit around the intergenerational part of it because, I mean, life is going through some huge changes, and also we've just been through a pandemic and lots of shutdowns. So today we've got a couple of guests, Dave Horton and Wayne Morgan from Ness Lake Bible Camp and First Baptiste Church accordingly. And we'll be talking a little bit about what that COVID lockdown was like. We're talking a little bit about the intergenerational perspective. So as we gear up to start doing a little bit of talking about these individuals and talking to them, I'd like to introduce my first guest, Wayne Morgan. And Wayne, it's your turn to talk. And I understand you've done a little bit of time in prison.
Yes. I always like that. As a correctional officer, a number of years ago, I worked at Huddle Lake Correctional Camp, and it was a great place to work down west of town, past West Lake, down the Blackwater Road. It was a camp where I got to teach programs, drug and alcohol programs. I got to bring gangs of inmates into the bush and do tree thinning and tree girdling and that kind of thing. So it was a great place to work.
And what about your roots in Prince George?
Well, I grew up here. I moved here when I was 2 years old. My dad I'm a pastor's kid. My dad was Lance Morgan, and it was it was different growing up in a town the size of Prince George as Lance Morgan's son, you know, and like many teenagers, I had to find my own way, did my own kind of sense of rebellion, but it was different as when everyone knew your dad, and knew your dad was the Baptist preacher, you know, at Fifth and Harper. So, but I'm glad to be following in his footsteps.
Yeah. I understand you're a little bit musically inclined as well.
I love to play bass guitar. I always say bass is God's instrument. It's true. Yeah, you can play drums.
Some debate, but yeah.
For church services, I often play guitar, and I like to play blues on piano sometimes. But
cool. So our next guest, Dave Horton from Ness Lake Bible Camp. I understand that a couple things about Ness Lake. You're going through your 70th anniversary and that you are now the director at Ness Lake. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself as well as your citizenship award you just got?
It's a lot to unpack. For sure. So Ness Lake turns 70 in 2023. And so we're already kind of have our headspace in what's coming, which is the 70th, because it's a big deal. Like that's a long time for any organization to exist, but there's just a lot of growth there as well. So I've worked there since 1999 in the summers, and then I started there in 2005 full time. So I've been there a really long time. And yeah, I became the director, I think in March, the executive director. And in so many ways, it's just standing on the shoulders of the giants. Like walking around the site, there's just so much good work that's already been done, not only on the site, but also work in the community and things like that. So yeah, and then the kind of the medal I received, it's like an actual, like a medal, like a military style. Yeah, it's quite intimidating. Yeah, it's the Medal of Good Citizenship. It's not the Medal of Great Citizenship. That's for really great people, but I got the Medal of Good Citizenship, it's a medal put on by the province and handed out for folks who kind of build into their community and take things kind of above and beyond what they are paid to do. So it's like citizenship outside of your like professional career. There's other recognitions for those kinds of things.
So you found yourself doing a lot of things that were virtual or out in, you couldn't do anything during lockdown, right?
Yeah.
So you had to find creative ways of doing these things.
Yeah, I found myself unemployed is what it was. So like in March of 2020, I was part of the layoff because camp just had to survive, and we knew that meant not running and not bleeding money through wages. So we laid off like 10 people. And I was one of those, and then I was not okay just to sit on my hands for a bit, and I said to my wife, I was like, if Trudeau is paying us to stay at home, then what are we going to do, and what can we do that would be similar to camp? So I immediately bought the same equipment you'd find at like a drive-in movie theater, like FM transmitter, so that I could run kind of any audio through that. And then it was, drive-in movies, and then drive-in trivia, and then realizing that people were having a hard time celebrating like weddings, funerals, graduations, those kinds of things. So then I started to help with, like, I offered to the community to put those on for free, and then that turned into like a lot of those kinds of things and helping organizations run their events. And then that turned into like citywide scavenger hunts and the Halloween kind of candy cruise, and just it ballooned into some pretty big stuff.
That sounds like kind of cool, fun stuff.
It was a hoot, like an absolute blast. Yeah.
Okay, so back on to Wayne and your organization. What did you find happened during COVID?
COVID was a hard time for our church, as it was for many churches. We like to meet together in person. Especially, we like to sing together as part of our faith tradition. We worship God through song. You know, to try and sing on Zoom or YouTube, it's kind of very weak, unless you have a huge production and you can make it sound good. And just hanging out together. I had to learn how to preach in front of a camera. That was weird, you know. I tried, looking at a teleprompter for a while, but that just wasn't natural. So finally, I just stood on the same podium and taped myself as if there was an audience. So it was tough, but it was mostly tough because we weren't able to hang out together and encourage each other in person. So yeah, it was tough.
So what did you see with the people? Like, there was lots of stuff at that point in time on TV about, church organizations and singing and all that kind of stuff. Like, what did you see with the people? Were they phoning you and saying, Wayne, what's going on here? What can we do? Like, what did you experience?
Well, I found that a lot of my reaching out and connecting with people had to be on the phone or via Zoom, and because that's the only way we could. For a while there, when the restrictions lifted a bit, well, we could maybe meet, at Tim Hortons or something. But it was very difficult, and but we do what we can, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and it's really important to know what some of these organizations were going through during that time as lockdown was coming upon us. Some are better at pivoting than others. And Dave, what were some of the things that you've seen as COVID was actually happening, and all your programs you used to have out there at Ness Lake, and just what kind of programs they were, and maybe how it affected each program? Yeah,
I mean, a lot of organizations, it kind of like polarized the actions of an organization, because it either caused them to like double down and like double down on doing nothing, or to try to do something. And the scramble to do something, like we saw it in churches, but also like working, like we watch like Big Brothers, Big Sisters, United Way, like watch some other like community leaders try to do stuff. But anybody who tried to do something got bit at some point. They had events that were shut down kind of right before, a day or two before they were about to run. And so with the camp, we saw the same thing. Initially, for the summer of 2020, for community safety, it was just, we're just going to shut and not run. There was no real options there. And then, once the summer moved in, there was options to run day camp, but we didn't have what we needed to do that in that summer. So I was laid off. 2021, we transitioned to like completely day camp. So we got 3 school buses, and we would pick up all the campers in the morning and bus them all out, and then bus them all back in at night. And it was wild. Like, we've never had that like commute, and to commute the entire camp out and back every day was like, it was wild. So it was, organizations either kind of sat and doubled down and said, we're just going to sit and wait it out, and kind of board up the windows. And then there's others that did like absolutely everything that they could. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a real challenging time. So Wayne, we'll go on to you. And, when it came time for that rebuilding, and you're probably still in that phase, so what are some of the things that your church organization is doing to rebuild, and what kind of skills are you saying are necessary?
The big thing is let us meet together. One of the good things that we learned is for some who are unable to meet together, we still are running on YouTube, so we can still provide that service for people on YouTube. But the big thing is, hey, let's come meet together. Whatever you're comfortable. If you're comfortable with a hug, give me a hug. If you're comfortable with an elbow thing, let's do that. But it's just reconnecting. People need each other. And what we need going forward are people who can organize people meeting together, because it can't just come down to one person trying to take care of a whole group of people. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what kind of things are churches out there doing? Do you have any idea?
Well, I actually don't. And I'm sorry to say, I've kind of been myopic. Is that the word, myopic?
If you want to use it.
I've kind of been focusing on us. We haven't yet gone into the neighborhood. Now, we are looking to do that in the very near future, go back. We used to do that pre-pandemic, so we're looking to kind of reach back out into beyond ourselves. But for the last couple of years, we've just been, how do we survive this? And so basically we've opened up our doors, come on in, and then now we're looking forward to how can we go out and engage our neighborhood.
Sounds like a fun thing. And I'm going to go on to Dave. Talking about Dave, you seem to have a fairly good handle on the whole digital electronic thing, and you learned lots during COVID. Like, what can you see as a vision for the future for people that really started liking Zoom and digital media, and those that just want to get together? What are you seeing?
The irony of all the stuff that I did was it was very like analog technology. Oh. Like the stuff that I was using was like I didn't run anything like online or do any kind of like online Zoom digital engagement. That was the kind of the whole purpose of the stuff that I ran, was very much what Wayne was saying, was like, we need to get together, we need to be in the same space, we need to see each other physically in some way. So like even FM transmitted, like an FM transmitted funeral, there was still a reception line, right? These unexpected things of like the cars all lining up and driving past the family of the one that was lost. And it's like, that's needed. You can't do that digitally. Yeah. So I lean towards what Wayne was saying, like it's what we saw when the events that I ran gave families options to get out of the house. It gave people an option to gather in safe ways. And that was kind of the baseline of everything I ran, was it had to be free, it had to be for everybody, and it had to be safe. And if it met those three criteria, then I would like full send on it. So as we exit stuff, I mean, the things that I ran are completely, I mean, they were silly ideas, like silly, borderline stupid, right? Of like, let's watch a movie on the side of Canadian Tire. That's a silly, and we're watching like 1940s Looney Tunes that are borderline racist. But because the copyright has slipped, I didn't have to pay anything. And so watching those and saying, this is a stupid thing. But during the pandemic, to have like 1,000 people drive through and to watch it in one night was saying, like, there is need and people want to get out of the house. So it's that same thing, I'd say, for organizations, for people, for the churches as well. They're seeing the same thing. What used to be how we met is now the reason we're meeting. We're meeting to meet. Where before it was like, we are meeting to worship, we are meeting to do a meal, we're meeting to celebrate, and now it is like from the churches and other organizations, it's like, let's meet just for the sake of getting to, like, just to kind of get the rust out of the joints of how to socialize and be safe.
So, that part of, utilizing the just silly ideas, what can you see for a future vision that overall can be used, not just because there's COVID, but because people want to do that?
That's kind of some of what came out of the pandemic as well, right? We did Candy Cruise, and I mean, we had like 10 locations across town. We had 50 organizations handing out candy. We had churches, we had tattoo shops beside, and it was like, this is hilarious. Yeah. Like the church beside the tattoo shop handing out candy. I was like, this is the best thing ever. Yeah. And there's still appetite for that stuff. The community still, there's parts of the community that are asking and saying, like, Candy Cruise works so well because, I mean, like Halloween in Prince George is awful. Like, it's either raining or snowing or -10. And like, my oldest son's in a wheelchair, and every house in Prince George has stairs up. Where for Candy Cruise, even the special needs community was like, this was the best Halloween that we've ever had with our family. We were all in the vehicle, we all shared it, we weren't loading and unloading, all that kind of thing. So there's appetite for some of the things we did. So like the Candy Cruise, the citywide scavenger scavenger hunts. Those were silly ideas that transfer over well. Where like the drive-in events, nobody wants that. Nobody wants to do a drive-in wedding. Like I ran one wedding that was minus 25, and the bridal party is in their gear, minus 25. 20 cars parked watching, and it's that side of the silliness where like everyone's willing to be like, yes, we're done with that. But then there is this other side of like the Children's Day in the park. When I was growing up, there was that Kids Day at Clearly Tenay Park, and it's like, so what do we? Things like Candy Cruise or the Family Day Adventure Cruise, those cruises made us think like, well, why aren't we doing this again? And why aren't we gathering in some way?
So I'm, kind of curious, and what I'm hearing here is that the collaboration between the different community entities is probably, the dynamics have really changed. It's not just about the so-called church anymore and the building and the facility. It's a collaboration of all kinds of things. And so get your perspective a little bit, Wayne, as to different kinds of collaboration could be done out there.
Well, I think I think the sky's the limit. I think we need to work together, and it doesn't just have to be, like you say, faith communities. We all have this need for spiritual health, physical health, emotional health, and we got to all do this together. Now, I'm not an expert in this, but I rely on people who can bring things together, can think about, okay, how can we, like crazy ideas. I have one person on staff who is great on thinking about wacko things, and so that's what we look forward to, and I think that's what we need to do. We need to collaborate.
And further to that, the whole collaboration with the intergenerational perspective. I mean, there's the young people, there's the people in their middle ages, and then there's the older ones, that age demographic, 45 to 64. They're just acquiring grandchildren. They're acquiring new in-laws, sons and daughters. The family dynamics are changing. And so are the use of labels. And I know that, labeling is a big thing. I mean, I know when I was first told that I was going to be a grandma, I was really taken aback because I did not want to be called grandma. That's my particular thing. So I've since talked with my teenage granddaughter about, well, what does she like? So I have my own label of what my grandkids address me at. Like, what can you say, being the director of Ness Lake, what can you say about that intergenerational approach between the parents, maybe the grandparents, the grandchildren? How do they work together?
This idea, like what Wayne is saying for collaboration, is like key on it, because things are so siloed and so compartmentalized that there's like an organization for this age group, and then there's an organization for youth, and there's an organization for preschoolers and all those things. But what we see at the camp, and kind of like through those events that we ran, was when the organizations are able to align and overlay their agendas together, like the fruit of it is so much greater. Because when you have events and when you have community things, when you have like things that you are doing with shared values, then you are drawing together, and there's like a multiplier in that. That when it is, people are able to engage as grandparents, parents, kids, and different like abilities, all those kinds of things. It is, because you look at like the Father's Day show and shine, and like who can be involved? It's like everybody. And who can bring a car? Everybody. If it was like the 20 to 30 age group, if it was the 20 and 30s car show, well, it would be very limited. But you see these, like the biggest events that run and the most successful in terms of how they engage as many people as possible, it's often saying like, we'll get the Motorcycle Association and this vintage car club and the British car club, we'll get them all together. They can all promote their own thing within this larger group. So for the camp, we see that because we've got like our fundraising banquets where we see a lot of like alumni who were involved 50 years ago, cool. Are very involved there. But then the alumni who were involved 5 years ago, they're just as alumni. They served and gave just as much, but then they're still more involved. They're not filling the seats and intaking, kind of hearing how it's going. They're much more still like hands-on. And so I think it's having those spaces for people to be in different places in life is just wildly valuable when trying to draw as many people together. And that's the church is constantly trying to do that, is trying to draw as many people together as they can. And the camp just serves the needs of the church. We exist to serve the church in its mission to serve the community.
And the church is not just a building, the church is the overall, like all the churches out there, is that right?
Yeah, and that's the thing, it's Christianese, right? It's like the language Christians use when talking to each other. So I appreciate the clarification there for sure, because it is, and when we refer to the church, we're referring to like the Mennonites and Baptists, the evangelical free, it's like the churches of Prince George is who we serve. And when we refer to the church, it's the body of believers. It's those anybody who's calling themselves a follower of Christ, and we're saying like you are part of the church. It's not even like one organization like a ministerial. It reaches kind of outside of those borders as well.
What if there was somebody that hasn't been to church for a very long time? How comfortable are they with coming to either one of you? And either one of you can answer this.
Well, we're working on that. I mean, people are people, and we are working on trying to be more open and welcoming. And it takes intentionality to say, hey, come on in. You don't have to be have this belief system or that belief. You don't have to be this age or that age. So we're in process, I guess is how I would say.
Yeah, and like our programs are set up so because we're owned by One Hope Canada, and part of One Hope Canada's like mission statement is to reach the otherwise unreached, to have those who otherwise would never come through the doors of a church take part and experience like a faith community and a Christian community. So the majority of our programs are aimed at the community, and we want everybody to show up from like different backgrounds, different ages, identities, like language. And so even like our teen camp that just finished, we had a camper who spoke no English and they spoke Ukrainian. They've just come to Canada from the Ukraine. And it was like, yes, that is what we want. And then we also have to look at how our programs are structured and how our housing and things are structured, because it's like, well, does somebody feel comfortable to stay in a cabin overnight? Well, if they don't, now we have a day camp program that we started from last year and have shrunk it down from 3 buses to 1. And so it is, anybody from the community should feel welcome to come to Ness Lake Bible Camp.
So if anybody was looking on either one of your websites, and we're in the process of winding down a little bit here right now, what would they see? And how open would you to be new ideas? Like supposing it wasn't a children's function, supposing it was a marriage weekend or a parenting weekend, what would somebody see on your website, and what do you guys have to offer?
Hopefully they would see a place for them. Because through our summer programming, it's aimed a lot at children. There's a family camp in the middle that's open to everybody. And then throughout the year, though, there's marriage retreats, men's retreats, mother-daughter camp, women's retreats, family day, which is just open to everybody. And we'll have 800, 900 people come through the camp in one day. And it is. Hopefully people look and see a spot for them to come and experience as a camper and as a participant. And then for many, they'll find a spot to be involved and to volunteer as well.
So Wayne, specifically, maybe you could start out talking a little bit about the volunteer perspective, and is the volunteers, are they as readily available now as they were before, or what's happening now?
No, only because many of our volunteers are tired. And so when we have new people come in and say, hey, I can see this, maybe we can do this, I go, yeah. And what that does is it brings new energy to some of our older, tired, not older necessarily age-wise, but people who have been tired and been working so hard and faithfully. And so it's been tough volunteer-wise, but we are looking forward to a bright future.
Well, I can really see the opportunity for a new vision, and I quite understand those shoulders that everybody's standing on to breathe in new ideas, because we are in a new normal now. I mean, people say, you know, like once we get back to normal. Well, what's once we get back to normal? Because everything is different. I think we've really entered the digital age here now, and we used to be maybe in the industrial age. I'm not sure. But, you know, as we wind down our program here today, I want to thank you both, Wayne from the Baptist Church and Dave from the Ness Lake Bible Camp. And, you know, just know for our viewers out there that, you know, they're very welcoming people, and give them a try and see what kind of wonderful, great ideas that you might have that they may be interested in doing. So with that, again, I want to express my thanks. And until next time, I'm Rita Wiebe, and thank you for joining us.